Welcome to the Brother Henry and You Show. I am your host, Henry Harris. Welcome to the Brother Henry and You Show. I am your host, Henry Harris. What a wonderful day it is, and also what a wonderful day it is to be alive. Also, what a wonderful day to be here with my dear friend, Kathryn Lynn. Today, we're going to be talking about discovering feminism through deconstruction. And Kathryn, thank you so much for taking this opportunity to be with us today.
Thank you so much.
Now, before we get started, I'm going to ask you some questions in regards to feminism. Tell us a little bit briefly about yourself, about your story in regards to what we're going to be discussing. Kind of lay a little foundation for us.
Sure. I've only recently become a quote feminist, probably in the past year, I'd say. Um, I was raised Catholic, but mainly agnostic. I became a born again Christian when I was, I believe, 24 years old. I'm 42 now. So I've been a Christian for nearly 20 years. I was a very devout Christian, pretty fundamentalist in my roots of Christianity, and then started deconstruction nearly 3 years ago. And I probably did um, maybe 10 years worth of deconstruction in 3 years, or a little less than 3 years. And so I challenged so many doctrines. Um, and when I came across some of the doctrines about women, namely what is said in First Timothy 2 about women being quiet and not to have authority over men, and also Ephesians 5:22 about wives submitting to their husband, and just the whole Genesis story. I started to explore that, and it really started to make me question things. And what I realized is that when before I became a Christian, a born again Christian, I maybe was, kind of in the world that, of course, is culturally affected by religion. So even people that aren't religious or devout Christians are still affected by religion, and what religion has placed women as,
Hmm.
underneath men. But I never had that from my parents specifically. It was only when I entered into Christianity, and specifically evangelical fundamentalist Christianity, that concept was brought onto me. And now I was like, okay, I'm not equal to men, I'm under men. And, it's like all of these constructs were suddenly there that I had to get used to. And it wasn't what the church was saying, it wasn't what people were saying, it was what God was saying, right? Because it was in the
Hmm.
Bible. And
Yeah.
so the Bible is equal to God. It's God's word, it's infallible, it's inerrant. Um, so, you know, um, this was this was basically um, my will being manipulated, by thinking that this is what God wants for me. I'm supposed to be lesser than a man.
So when you first heard that, you didn't question it at all. Like, did you not feel something was a little off with that ideology?
I mean, looking back, in retrospect, I really bought into this hook, line, and sinker. I was probably one of those people that you would describe as a radical save. Like, I was evangelizing immediately. I was in my Bible constantly. I started, a Bible study early on in my Christian walk, and the way that it was presented to me was, here's the thing. It's not like they tell you you are less than a man.
Yeah. They don't tell you that.
They don't say it like that. They don't say, this is a male dominated world and a male dominated system, and you are really just, subject to man's authority. So just deal with it. That is not how it's presented.
Hmm.
It's presented in, I think the term is complementarianism. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. I'm just learning about some of this stuff. But, it's presented in a way where, no, this is complementary, right? Like, this is man's role and this is your role.
It is a man's world.
It's
I'm
well,
sorry. I'm sorry. That song, James Brown came to my head.
I mean, so it's not like so the way that they sugarcoat it basically and say it in a certain way where it causes you to not really question it. It's like, oh well, yeah, that makes that makes some sense. This is my role, that's their role. This is what it says in the Bible. I guess it's true. Um, the way it's presented, it doesn't raise flags immediately. And plus, it's what you generally see in culture.
Hmm.
So it's not that it was so different from everything I've ever known in my life, even though in my own household it was never blatant in my face or blatantly put upon me as a woman growing up or a girl growing up. But that's the culture we live in. So, you know, to answer your question, I bought into it. I really did. So it took a while for me to realize.
That's good. And I think it's a beautiful thing. You mentioned some about they may not have came out and said, you're below the man as far as authority or whatever. But I was thinking to myself, I was thinking earlier, and I didn't ponder on it long, but I was thinking how proud I am of women today who there are so many powerful women in history who were on the back burner, who were
Mhm.
told to be quiet, sit down, don't say nothing, don't go forward. Because we've always been taught that the man is the forefronter. He takes care of things. He does it. Then I start to think about women. What would it look like, even as a man, looking at women in the perspective of being in that light, in a position of leadership? I'm just 34, and to be honest with you, I I had never thought or dreamed that the White House would hold the first female vice president.
Yeah.
And I mean, to me, I get speechless when I think about that. I was like, wow. And to see her up there, and I'm like, this is just stunning considering how women were suppressed and oppressed. And through that, probably ended up depressed and all that stuff. How they started out that way. I think there was even a thing on my research that women couldn't even vote at one time.
That's right.
To now, they have all these freedoms. I just think it's amazing to see women that's actually coming to the forefront and doing amazing things. And they're actually getting to that place where they are unstoppable. You mentioned that you are a feminist.
Hmm.
I support that. Um, but there may be people out there that's watching right now that may be saying, what is a feminist? What is feminism? What does that mean? Can you kind of let our audience know what feminism is? Because sometimes people hear that word, particularly men, they hear that word and they may get a negative spin to it.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
and I don't know why. Maybe you can explain that.
Yeah.
I never got a negative vibe from it or anything of that nature. But a lot of times people hear that word and they're like, oh. And I don't know why they feel that way. I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't see nothing wrong with it. So, what is feminism?
So, I mean, in its simplest term, it's kind of the belief that women should have equal rights to men. In relation to gender, there should be equality, and of course, it relates to activism in that arena. But you're not wrong in saying that there is a lot of kind of miscommunication about that, or misperceptions about what feminism is, and I've confronted it a lot on my posts. I mean, and I'll be the first one to say that I was one of those people who really didn't understand what it meant, and I had certain um, negative ideas about feminism. uh, there's an idea that feminists hate men, that they want to usurp men and be in authority over men. And, I can't speak obviously for all feminists, but I
Mhm.
could speak for myself and for the feminists that I know personally. That is not at all how we feel. I don't hate men at all. I love men. I don't want to usurp anyone's authority. I just want to stand shoulder to shoulder with
Mhm.
men and have equity in culture and in life. Um, and I don't think that that's it's interesting how so many people kind of cast that in it automatically in a negative light,
Mhm.
is because of those preconceived notions, and also because of our religious undertones that say that men are the head of women. So anything to do with equality is not going to be really tolerated. And I don't want to say all Christians. I keep saying that. Obviously, not all Christians feel this way. I still consider myself a Christian. I don't feel that way, and I know many Christians, even in my own church, especially my own church, that don't feel that way. So I try not to generalize, but you know, um, just understand that when I'm saying that.
Yeah.
So it's not just men who hold those negative opinions about feminism. I've encountered many women who do too.
Yeah, I was going to say that because I know I've met a few women and even when I mention that word, they're like, "Oh no, that's the devil. That's evil, and I'm not a part of it." And I'm like, I said, I think there's a lot of things in regards to whatever subject you want to talk about. Somebody is always doing something to try to bring a negative light to it. That doesn't mean that the movement or whatever it is, that don't mean that it's bad.
Mhm.
And some people just throw it all away altogether. But I
Right.
have encountered not many, but I would say just a few. Even when I do certain posts about, um, uplifting women and stuff like that, and I've had a few women who come on. You sound like a feminist. That's strange, me being a male, and they see me that way. So I'm like, okay, do I take this as a compliment or an insult?
Right.
I took it as a compliment because I said, how many men do you know on Facebook that's actually, you know, trying to bring the best out of women and pushing women to
Oh,
fulfill their potential and their purpose? Uh,
yeah.
Not too many. So I appreciate you for explaining that. The topic is discovering feminism through deconstruction. That word deconstruction, it doesn't really mean to demolish. It means to break down or to analyze.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, what is it exactly we are deconstructing?
So that's a great question. I think different people may answer in different ways. And for me personally, deconstruction has been critically analyzing some of my held beliefs, my doctrines, things that I held as absolute truth. And, I had to decide, I think it started with someone telling me, "Hey, the Bible's not the word of God, right? It's Jesus."
Hmm.
And it's like it's so funny because I kind of knew that, but I still had this thing in me where the Bible and God were on the same plane.
Hmm.
And so I had to sit with that and be like, "Oh, it's not the word of God." So, well, what exactly is it? Is it inerrant? Is it infallible? Who even wrote these 66 books in this canon.
Mhm.
We don't even know the authors of some of the writings in the Bible, and all of these things that I was never taught and I didn't fully explore before. The doctrine of eternal conscious torment, hell, heaven, obviously women's roles, um, so many things that I just had to look at and examine because I just kind of took them at face value, like, oh, this is a truth because this is what Christianity is. This is what everybody says it is. This is what I'm learning in church from the leaders that I respect. And so, it must be true. And it feels kind of embarrassing a little bit, how much I just accepted without critically analyzing a lot of these doctrines. So deconstruction is really just analyzing and coming to a decision of whether or not you're going to continue to hold that belief or you're going to replace it with something else or just dismiss it. Um, and I did a lot of that in the past 3 years. So, and it
What
was a
would you What would you say is the most misunderstood thing concerning feminism? What would you say that is?
um, I would say just that the women who are feminists and the men who are feminists hold that position as, thinking that women are trying to take over the world and just have this authority over men and that they're all angry and hateful and combative. Um, are we angry? I mean, I'll tell you, there are days I'm very angry,
Hmm.
very angry. I have cried multiple times over the things that I'm discovering. Um, but I think feminists are very misunderstood in that respect. And when we get down to the basics of, just hey, women should have equal rights to men. Like, really, you
Hmm.
don't agree with that? Because if you don't, then that's kind of being sexist. And isn't
Yeah, it
that
is.
be highlighting as something that's not cool rather than feminism? So yeah, I mean, that would be my answer.
That's awesome, and I agree with you. Women should be equal, not like man, ahead and then the woman's below. I think little by little, even in big measures, that's starting to really crumble down.
It is.
Uh, the way I see women coming forth in power now. This is a very big question, and this is not no attack against men. Anyone that knows my heart knows me. If you take it as an attack or as an offense, maybe that's an issue you have to deal with in your own heart. But I want to ask you, as a female, why do you think some men are triggered when they hear the word feminism?
Well, it's a great question. And, I can't pretend to know what's in a man's head when they hear that word. I can only speak from my perspective in seeing some of the responses from men that I get on some of my posts that are feminist in nature. And I'd say, some of it maybe is because they feel threatened in the sense that, they think that feminism is equal to women hating men, women want to be over men and take authority over men. So maybe they feel threatened by it. Maybe they are so indoctrinated with the certain scriptures in the Bible that we point to,
Hmm.
make them feel that this is the order that God instituted. So who are you?
And
To,
that gives them, but that also gives them more power and authority as a man
isn't
uh,
that
to to feel that way. That validates. They use that to validate how they feel towards women.
right? Right. So, I think some of it is that, the very well intentioned men who are just thinking that they're doing the right thing by keeping women in their place. right?
Yeah.
You know, women coming out of their place is disrupting things and it's causing chaos and it's breaking down the family unit. I mean, I've literally had men tell me this. Even women not staying in their role as a stay-at-home mom working in the home only, but going outside of the home to work is destroying families.
You mentioned that a few times about women staying in their role. Uh, that sounds like confinement to me in so many ways.
Yes, confinement. I mean, look,
It's almost like, okay, you stay in your lane. It's almost like a restriction. Like you can't go. It's like you can't. You know the word limitless. Like you can just. It's beyond. This means to go beyond.
right?
And when I've noticed you said that a couple of times, it just dawned on me. I was like, sounds like confinement, and
It
to
is.
me,
It is confinement. So not even, and I'm not even arguing like, you know, should women stay in the home or not stay in the home? Do whatever you want. If you
hmm
want to be a stay-at-home mom, if that's your dream, then by all means do it and do
hmm
it 150%. But my point is that we're not often given a choice. We're kind of funneled into that role. And, you know, in the past, it was used to really keep women under control because if they didn't have a higher education and they didn't have a job, they were financially dependent on their husbands.
hmm
We really didn't have much of a choice. So it's the elimination of choice. Yes, confinement. It's it's interesting because if you talk to women, even if you would have talked to me, you know, kind of back in the day, I wouldn't have called it involuntary, right? Because, you know, I'm volunteering, you know, to be in this role. Um, but the thing is that our will has been manipulated to think that this is what we're supposed to be doing and we don't really have a choice, and if we do something different then we're going to be shamed for it, blamed for, you know, the this disruption of the family unit or destroying the family because we're, you know, we're letting other people raise our kids because we're not the ones at home with them. You know, I don't see anyone, you know, saying that to men like, oh, you, hey, you decided to become a father, you now need to stay home with your kids.
hmm
I don't see anyone saying that to dads. And I do know some stay-at-home dads, you know, which is great. Like again, it's choice. It's availability of choice. It's not one way or the other. It's having the choice to do and feel free to do what you want to do. For me, for instance, in my own household, my husband has never ever been the type to say, "This is your role. This is what you're going to do, and this is what I'm going to do, and that's the way it's going to be." He's never been like that. And, you know, I don't only work outside the home. I started a company. I own a company and I run a company. So I'm doing all of those things. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a company owner, um, as well as other things. And you know what? My family is just fine. They're fantastic. So, you know, it's just hard for me to read those things. And I know other people's experiences are different, but we really have to get away from those siloed approaches to gender roles and, you
hmm
know, just assuming that this is a women's role and this is what they're supposed to be doing. And if you don't, there's something wrong with you, or, oh, you know, gosh, that's unfortunate. You know, you didn't get to stay home. It's like, well, actually, I didn't choose to stay home. I
yeah,
want to go out and work outside the house and raise my kids.
yeah. Thank you for answering that. Or the ideal that many people hold that because you are a woman, there are certain things that you cannot do.
Hmm.
I really don't like that when people, particularly men who hold that negative mindset that because you're a woman you can't do so. I know women that can change their own tires
Right?
or do their own oil change. I know
Right.
one personally, she does everything a man can do. Try telling her what she can't do, she'll do it.
Right.
And that's
Right.
my encouragement to all the females that are watching right now. Anyone that comes to you with that negative approach or mindset and tell you what you can't do, what you can't accomplish, what you can't be, just simply prove them wrong. You can do whatever you want to do, you can be whatever you want to be, just as much as a male can do it. There's no restrictions, no confinement. As I talked about earlier, um, you can do it. Um, how do you think feminism has affected society today?
That's a great question, and honestly, I told you I'm new to this, so I'm just kind of getting started in my research and understanding of the history of it. And somebody I was kind of researching was Simone de Beauvoir, um, who wrote a book called The Second Gender, I think, or Second Sex, and
Hmm.
it talks about the history of how women are treated. And this was, I believe, in 1949, if I'm not mistaken, is when the book came out. Um, and it's kind of stunning to me how certain things weren't really until recent. 1920, I think, was when
Hmm.
the last state kind of came around in having women be allowed to vote. So, how has feminism changed? It's perpetual. I mean, we've come a long way. I think we have a long way to go. I read statistics about wage disparity. For men get paid, actually, women get paid, I think it's 82 cents for every dollar that a man is paid, which comes out to be roughly $10,000 per year in disparity between men and women for the same job.
Hmm.
So, and even looking at leadership, I think I wrote down a quote or statistic. According to Forbes, only 21% of senior leadership positions are held by women in the United States.
Hmm.
So, I think that, like you were saying before, I think we've come really far with feminism and, women achieving equal rights. We used to not be able to own property um, or learn, like these things that we just take for granted. We didn't always have.
Hmm.
And it's pretty stunning to look at the history of that and see how far we've come. And I'm proud of us for where we are. But certainly there's more work to be done. And for me personally, my expression on Facebook it's an outlet for me to express myself, but it's also an effort to kind of wake people up, to the stuff out there that they may be believing about themselves and about each other that can be really damaging and has been damaging for a long time. And it's just time to move on from those belief systems.
Yeah, and your presentations are so um, respectful too.
Thank
Uh,
you.
it's never, to me, it's never come across as aggressive or coming across too strong.
Got it.
um, yeah, and um, and you're very kind. I read throughout the comments sometimes, even with people who do come across as aggressive, you're very kind to them. I read some of your comments where you're like, okay, you kind of move on, and
Thank
um, then you have those that still try to argue, and I'm like, okay, just state your point, um, and just move on. But when you're dealing with Facebook and social media, you got people that always try to, prove their point.
Yep.
I think this was a wonderful conversation, and I appreciate you for being on the show.
We hope you have enjoyed today's program. We want to connect with you. Visit us at facebook.com/The Brother Henry and You Show, or visit us on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Henry Harris 100. We're so grateful you tuned in today and hope you have a fantastic day.